Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the HPA TRX webcast. Virtual reality, augmented reality, exploring its rapid integration into entertainment applications. Today's webcast is brought to you by HPA and is intended to give you a preview of the HPA TRX VR AR seminar scheduled for Monday, February 20th as part of the 2017 HPA TechRetreat in Palm Springs. I'm your host, Joel Welch, and I'd like to welcome you. It is with great pleasure that I introduce your speakers to you. First, we have Marcie Jastrow. Marcie is Senior Vice President, Immersive Media, and Head of Technicolor Experience Center. Marcie, if you would turn your webcast on, please. Your webcam.
Hi, Joel. How are you?
Good. Welcome. Also speaking today is Lucas Wilson. Lucas is founder and executive producer of SuperSphereVR. And just a heads up, Lucas is in Singapore, so it's very, very early in the morning. So our speakers will be making a few opening remarks, which will be followed by a question and answer period. And for our guests, if you'd like to ask a question, please type it into the question or chat box, depending on how it's labeled, and indicate that you have a question. When it's your turn, I will temporarily unmute you, say that you have the floor, and that way you can speak directly to Marcie and Lucas. Then, once you've asked your question, I will remute you. If you don't have a microphone and can't ask an audio question, please simply type your question into the box and I will read it on your behalf. Without further delay, I'd like to give the floor to Lucas. Lucas, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. And just to let you know, I'm in my hotel room in Singapore and the Wi-Fi is a tiny bit dodgy. So if I cut out for a minute, it's because the Wi-Fi cuts out every now and then, and I'll reconnect in a few seconds. So don't panic if I cut out for a minute or two. Also, it's 2 a.m., so if I sound a bit loopy, it's because I am. I guess the main thing that I wanted to say is that first of all, really happy that the HPA has decided to do a focus on VR, and that I was fortunate enough and honored enough to be able to work with the HPA in helping to put together a series of speakers that I feel, and that Marcie and I, when working on it together, that we feel puts together a pretty good list of several different disciplines in VR and AR that everybody's dealing with right now if you're in that world, from interactive challenges in building game engine-based mechanics to live streaming to pre-recorded to 360 audio, a little bit about from some pretty smart folks about where the future is headed. I really hope that the half day that we have will give our audience a fairly good high-level technical overview of the VR and AR market, the challenges that exist in the VR and AR market, some case studies, and letting everybody know that it is obviously it's real, but letting everybody know that it's real, that there's a lot of production and post-production work being done in that industry, that the workflows are being developed now, and it's incumbent on the HPA membership really to jump in feet first and bring their expertise to the table and help develop those workflows and help make the industry better than it already is. Is that about cover it, Joel?
Yes, indeed. And
right. So that's my intro.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Our next speaker is Marcie Jastrow. Did I pronounce your name correctly, Marcie?
Yeah, it's good enough, Jastrow. Hi, everyone. How are you? So, yeah, just to echo what Lucas said, it is a great time in VR and a great time and the right time for the people of HPA to get involved and to understand these workflows. Very similar to traditional post-production workflows when you're doing live action, but when we're talking about game engine and interactivity, they are a bit different, and it would really behoove everyone out there to come out and hear what we're talking about. The center that I run, the Technicolor Experience Center, is committed to finding the gaps within the workflows that are being presented through virtual reality and augmented reality. And I think that there's tremendous amount of opportunity for people to get involved now, and I'm really excited to see how the panels go all day, and how people receive what's happening in the VR and AR markets.
Very good, thank you. The next period is a question and answer period, and what I'd like to do is remind our guests to please use the question box and the chat box, if it's labeled that way, to indicate you have a question. If you don't have a microphone, please type the question. I'll read it on your behalf. And Lucas, if you're there, if you could come back, I'd like to ask the first question. Hello. And we can sort of self-moderate as to who's going to respond. But as I said, I will ask the first question, and I encourage our guests to ask questions as well. So, VR tends to create an emotional connection with viewers. Why is that, and how does it manifest itself?
Go ahead, Lucas.
I'll take a stab at it. An example that I use a lot, and just as a very quick introduction. I've been in production and post for a while, and for the past 2 years I've run SuperSphereVR, which is a VR production company. We have offices in New York, LA, and Singapore, which is why I'm in Singapore. And we've done probably 60 or 70 full VR deliveries for a wide variety of clients, so have done sort of a lot of work across the gamut. And we did a job with The Verge about a year ago that was with Michelle Obama in the White House, and that was a good day. That was a fun day, but it was just 10 minutes of the First Lady and her social media director being interviewed in chairs. That's all it was. So the question begs the question: why would you shoot that in 360? Why do you want to present that in VR? It's just people being interviewed. The reason is that immersion matters. When you have that finished product, you have if it was on a normal screen, you have a 16:9 image, and the rest of the world around you is still your living room, or your dining room, or your kitchen, or whatever. But when you're in a headset, it's the difference between looking at the White House and being in the White House. And it makes a difference. Immersion matters, and it creates an emotional connection with the audience. And if you're not in this business to create a deeper emotional connection with your storytelling, then what are you doing? Mm-hmm. That's why I think it creates that excuse me. That's why I think it creates that emotional engagement and involvement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would just say that it's about presence. When you're watching a traditional theatrical or television show, it's truly passive. You're sitting there. You're not engaging with anything. You can't really get to know the character that well, or walk around that character, or be in their world. It's about world building and really understanding what the social and the psychological implications are of VR and AR, and what the story is. And I feel like it really brings you in when you're looking at a story that has to do with refugees, and you actually get to see what their plight is. Mm-hmm. It's a very different feeling than watching it passively on a movie screen.
Okay. We do have some questions coming in from our HPA guests. The first one is from Max. Do you believe there is a market for VR, AR over DTT/satellite?
I can't answer that. I mean, I think that the technology needs to get better, and we're not there yet. But I think that for live events, that might be something that is working. But I don't know much about the satellite world.
Yeah, I think that certainly there's a market for VR in any wide distribution medium. But if you're going to be dealing with DTT and satellite, then you've got to figure out, well, how do you effectively communicate 360 over traditional lines, and how do you get it down into a packaging that fits into the 2, 3, 4 compression factors that feeds expect? How do you do it, and how do you get a 360 player there? You can do it in an app if you're doing so with something like Apple TV. You can certainly package an app, but that's different. Putting it into DTT and sort of into linear broadcast, I think, is a whole different ball game. I'm not sure there's a market there just because of how VR is evolving, but we'll see.
Okay, great. Let's see. Our next question from our HPA guest, Ramon. Says, we are currently performing QC on VR experiences, both 360 video-based as well as software VR applications. One pain point for us is the variety of deliverables. He's wondering, are you aware of any standardization bodies or anybody that's working on anything to create a common format?
We are. Technicolor is definitely.
Excellent.
One of the things that you need to look at is, in order to monetize this, it needs to go wide and on as many platforms as possible. But the biggest problem is you're creating a file for each one of those platforms, oftentimes making it a really expensive part of the process. So Technicolor is committed to trying to figure out, is there a MES file that we can create, a wrapper to deliver to all of these different platforms. Mm-hmm. There is a standardization body that's happening up in Silicon Valley, but it's not really grown or has seen any sort of fruition yet. But we are looking at standardizing.
Okay, great.
And I would also say that it's I just wanted to add that it's a really important question. And I deal with, especially colorimetry, I deal with colorimetry issues in delivery all the time, because there are, in the VR world, there's so many steps in the chain where the image gets stepped on in some way that you have no control over. And then to add on top of that, the state of consumer headsets right now is pretty crappy opticals, pretty crappy optics. So in addition, no matter, let's say you figure out to make the red on your screen equal the red on the Samsung phone for delivery. If you figure that out, great, God bless you. But then you stick it in these cheap plastic optics, and you're dealing with how that steps on an image as well. So it's very difficult to get consistency right now, and standards are something that absolutely need to happen for VR to take off, for especially for dramatic narrative and the expectations that directors and DPs have for how imagery is going to be treated and delivered.
Yeah, and as far as the color goes, we've been working on trying to create LUTs for each one of these headsets and some sort of proper image pipeline. And we at the Tech are also trying to figure out what a proper color bay may look like, or what a proper editing bay may look like, and what is the actual workflow into the headsets, because you are coloring now. You're not creating one file and then everything flows from there like we've done for many years. It's coming from many different places. Mm-hmm. So the creative intent is very important, and making sure that you're able to standardize it across all the different headsets.
Okay. Are there different kinds of VR? I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Lucas.
Yes. I don't know. I mean, that gets into the semantic discussion of can be a slightly religious argument of what is VR, and what is virtual reality, and where's that line. And I think everybody has a slightly different definition. My definition is that VR is, you cross the line from 360 video into VR as soon as you add user agency, as soon as you add any kind of interactivity. Mm-hmm. If the viewer can do something to the story that's being presented and alter how that story is being presented, at that point you've crossed the line into VR. That's my definition.
Yeah, and I would say that, so I think that what we've done in the industry is we've kind of broken it up into 3 different pieces. So VR, AR, mixed reality. And I would say that all of it is immersive media. And all of it is a step into where we're going, which is mixed reality, augmented reality. Mm-hmm. But I think that once you are interacting, that is what is immersive media. And whether that started with 3D and then into HDR and now into this, I think that into VR or AR, I think that ultimately at the end of the day, it's about immersion and it's about interactivity.
Okay. I'm going to combine two questions here because they're similar, and I think they're asking for your opinion. And they're from HPA guests Gahendra and Parvez. Um, when do you think the mass population will be ready to consume VR? And Parvez asks, do you think customers are willing to pay for VR?
That's the goal, right? Um, to monetize it, and there's many different types of VR that has been monetized and is making money. But I would say that mobile is really what's going to drive it. Yes, tethered headsets and interactivity and the Vives are awesome, and it's a great way to watch VR, but you're probably 3 to 5 years away from when everybody is going to have one in their home, which is why I think mobile drives it. Again, it's really hard to answer these questions because everything changes like daily in
Oh, for
VR
sure.
and AR. And so, it's about making as much content and getting the content out and what's going to bring the people back in the headsets. So what is that moment in time that's going to bring people back to want to go get a Vive or an Oculus? But ultimately, I think that mobile will drive it, just like mobile has driven everything right now.
And I would add that that it depends on what your definition of mass market is, because the mass market is watching VR right now. There was a video that went up there was a 360 video that went up on Friday from SpaceX. This is the Hyperloop video, the first 360 video of the Hyperloop from Elon Musk. Within 24 hours, it had almost 1 million views in
Wow.
360 video. Discovery VR's app, in a speech that a Discovery executive gave in Asia Pacific several months ago, the Discovery VR app has been downloaded, I think.
Oh, we lost him.
Yes, and this may be one of those uh, periods where the Wi-Fi in Lucas's hotel has bumped him off. He says it only takes a few seconds for him to reconnect. Um, uh, while we're waiting for Lucas to come back, I wonder, Marcie, if I could ask you the next question from HPA guest
Sure.
Barbara. How does VR and 360 video differ from a production perspective?
Well, it depends if you're doing live action or you're doing game engine. But live action is essentially needing to stitch together images or putting the images together in the cloud and stitching it there and doing some fine stitching. Spatial audio and audio mixing is very different. Color correction, just the workflow, while it's similar, editing in VR is very different. Although the live action workflow is pretty much the same as a post-production workflow. You're just adding the stitching in, and the way you mix it is different, and the way you deliver is different. But if you're talking about a game engine workflow, that's different. That's being done in something that is done more by developers and coders and people building games, and what that game workflow is. Did you hear the question, Lucas?
I did not. I had dropped off for a minute.
Yes.
Um,
The question was, how does production for 360 and VR differ from traditional production?
Well, the live action workflow is you're using a different camera. Live action workflow, production is production. The role of a grip and a gaffer and a DP and a director does not change. It's a different set of rules. It's a different palette that you're using, and you have to take different things into consideration. And obviously, you're using different cameras, but production is production. So it's just learning how to do 360 live action production and learning how to do it effectively. And then I heard Marcie. Heard the tail end of what I think Marcie was talking about is that if you know you're going into it building an interactive production, then the rules also change in terms of how you shoot and what you're shooting and what you're doing. But I would say production is production. In the post-production pipeline, I heard Marcie say that you're adding stitching, which is true. That doesn't exist anywhere else. But other than that, it's editorial, it's audio, it's color. It's the same stuff everybody's been doing. It's just different rules. It's just new stuff to learn, but it's the same tools.
Okay. Just a heads up, we have scheduled this for 30 minutes and we're at 20 minutes past the top of the hour, and I think we have more questions than we're going to have time for. If I pass these questions along, could we get answers to some of them? Not to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Okay, good.
What we're here for.
Okay, great, great. Let's see. Our next question is from HPA guest Ian. As the ability to provide 360 visual immersion continues to advance, what about the state of 360 audio? When will that catch up?
Marcie, you want to go first?
Okay, so audio is a really big deal, I think, and one that needs to be addressed in a much larger way than it is. I think that we're working with some vendors right now to see what the best ambiotic sound is, and how to part of where people are seeing VR is in large crowded showrooms and conventions, and part of the problem is you can't really hear the audio in the headsets. So the goal for me over the next 6 months is really to do a deep dive into audio and to see what we can do to make it better. We've brought people into Technicolor like Scott Gershon, who has been a theatrical mixer for many, many years, working with the likes of Guillermo del Toro, but has also been in games and VR for the last 3 years. So games for 20, but VR for the last 3. So he's really trying to break the rules in VR and see what we can do to fill the gaps in the sound issues.
And we spend a lot of time, I started out life as a recording engineer. That was my first career, as a recording engineer and a front of house engineer, so audio is near and dear to me. And we've spent a lot of time working with some pretty high-end artists in doing recording and mixing, specifically in 360, professional level recording and mixing. We did something with Sting about a month and a half ago. There was a concert in LA about a month ago that was Audio Slave's reunion with Prophets of Rage. We're working with several big music artists right now to completely sort of reimagine how music is done and remix and present in 360. 360 audio is amazing in VR, and it provides an opportunity to do things that you can't do in any other format. Jump scares and horror, audio in 360 it's like it was written for jump scares and horror, for instance.
Good, thank you. Next question from HPA guest Chris. What do you view as the top 3 technologies that need development for VR? And he suggests resolution, latency, light field displays, eye tracking, etc.
So I would say the biggest thing right now for me is compression. We have to figure out the compression world of VR. How to get the image quality up. I think it's also about story. I mean, you know, the thing is if you have a great story, people tend to forgive a little bit on what's happening with the technology. And it's also a different way of I think you're going to have different storytellers telling the stories in VR. Not necessarily the same guys that have been doing it for the last 50 years. I think you're going to have this intersection of developers and artists, as well as traditional directors, but ultimately technology has to get better in the way of, you know, moving the latency up and getting the part of the issue is user interface, and getting people to really understand how to get into a headset, the education of understanding headsets, understanding if you're not a gamer, you know, when have you ever used a hand controller and how do you ever move through? So I think user interface is a big deal for me. Education is a big deal for me. And then as we start creating these higher end, higher imagery type products, type VR products, I think we'll start cracking the code on some of the other technology issues.
And I think that it needs to be broken up sort of into short term and long term in terms of what needs to be developed. Honestly, for the short term, this is going to sound funny because it's so low tech, but one of the biggest issues for me and something I consistently fight with is hygiene. For VR to gain mass acceptance in a public distribution method, if everybody's going to have headsets at home, great. But if you're going to do it in any kind of public distribution method, hygiene is a big deal. It's gross to put on the same headset from 6, 7, 8 different people. It's nasty, and that's not a problem that's been solved. And it's actually something that I deal with quite a bit, and I spend a lot of time working on it and dealing with it. So that, and then also, and I think this will just naturally get better, but the crappy consumer optics and the ergonomics of the headset. Nobody wants to wear a headset for more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time, not because the content is bad, but because the headsets are sweaty, uncomfortable, and the optics suck. So I think that the phones, the mobile devices, the mobile compute devices, and the creation methodologies are way, way, way ahead of the distribution and display technologies right now, and that's where I'd like to see things improve in the next year or two.
Okay, great. I have a question that I'd like to ask. How do VR storytellers focus the viewer's attention and overcome people's desire to look around? Or do we want to prevent that?
All right, so here is, I thought I had a headset around me, I don't. Here's how I've seen thousands of people watch VR demos, right? Here's what everybody does when they put on a headset for the first 5 or 6 seconds. Right? But then the interesting thing is, after about 10 seconds, here's what happens. Because human beings are wired to focus. Your head's not on a swivel. It doesn't go 360 degrees. Human beings are wired to focus. They're wired to look in one direction at a time. The role of the director and the DP does not change. It's to guide the eye. Whether that's done on a 16:9 screen or whether that's done in a 360-degree canvas, that's their job. And if they do it well, they're going to tell people where to look, and people are going to look there. And there's always going to be people that are going to be swiveling around looking behind them. But if you look behind you, it's the same as in real life. If I look behind me right now, it's my hotel room, and it's boring, and my focus is here. So I'm going to look back there for about 2 seconds, and then I'm going to be like, okay, that's boring, and I'm going to look here because this is what I'm focused on. Right. So I think that question is a red herring a lot of times because people get really worried about it without taking into account how human beings look at things.
So this is a lesson in VR storytelling 101, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Well put, Lucas. Well put.
We have about 3 more minutes. It's 27 past the top of the hour, and we'll probably be able to take 1, maybe 2 more questions. Next question from HPA guest Chris. How do you feel about location-based VR?
I think it's awesome. I just actually got to go to the VR IMAX Center, where I thought was so well thought out and so interesting, and the way that they put the pods together and the content that they chose, I think was really superbly done. And I think you're going to need it for a couple of years of location-based or room scale type void-like installations. But as the technology gets better, you're probably not going to have these location-based. They'll just get better and better. But I think for right now, as a way of awareness and a great place to go see good VR, and they have good hygiene, Lucas. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think location-based VR is incredible. That's actually part of the reason I'm in Asia right now. And it's in its infancy, and also you have to sort of separate, I think, between what Marcie was talking about with the Void, which is a full-on experience where you're walking around through rooms. What IMAX has done, which is sort of lots of room-scale pod experiences, and then also perhaps 360 video, where people are sitting in chairs looking at stuff. So, but I think it's a huge market, and I think it's going to only get bigger.
Very good, and we are just about at the bottom of the hour, and I just need to find the right button here. So with that, I would like to thank our speakers, Marcie Jastrow and Lucas Wilson, for speaking during this HPA webcast, and this is an HPA webcast in preparation. Give you a preview of the TRX seminar coming up the 20th of February at the HPA TechRetreat. I also want to give you a little more information here. If you would like additional information about the VR/AR session, please visit hpaonline.com or call the number on the screen. Thank you to our HPA guests. Thank you to Marcie, Lucas. Good night. And
Night,
we hope to see you in a future HPA webcast. Take care, everybody. Safe travels.